Please take your seats. The meeting is about to begin. Remember to speak into the microphone, as this meeting is being recorded for public record. Please stand by. We are going on air in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the December 2024 Finance and Economic Resiliency Committee meeting. I have a lot of exciting items for our community here today. This will be the last FERC meeting of the year. Appreciate in advance all the time and commitment and efforts from my colleagues, the elected commissioners that not only sit on this committee, but also frequently participate, all the staff that does the work behind the scenes. And let's get right on board. I'll kick it off to our CFO and our city attorney, but we're going to hear the FIFA item for 10:30 time certain. Very excited about for the 2026 World Cup.
Good morning, everyone. Today's meeting of the Finance and Economic Resiliency Committee has been scheduled in a hybrid format, with a quorum of the committee physically present and remaining members, staff, and members of the public appearing either in person or virtually via Zoom. In order to participate in today's meeting, virtually members of the public may dial 1-888-475-4499 and enter the webinar ID, which is 863-6059-5462#, or log into the Zoom app and enter the webinar ID, which again is 863-6059-5462. Any individual wishing to speak on an item must click the raise hand icon if they are using the Zoom app, or dial *9 if participating by phone.
Thank you, Chair. A few announcements. We have 2 time certains. OB2 will be time certain at 10:30, MB3 10:45. Items MB5, 6, and 8 are linked and will be heard together. Items MB7 and 11 are linked and we heard together. And we have 2 deferrals, MB12 and MB15. Thank you. And we'll call the first one. Yeah. First item will be OB2, discuss the creation of incentives to establish Miami Beach as the local hub for World Cup 2026, OB2.
So let me turn it over to you and the team that we have here from FIFA.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, committee members. Lisa Arrogante, Director of Tourism and Culture, City of Miami Beach. I'm going to provide a brief recap regarding this item that is detailed in the memo before you regarding incentives for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. This item was last heard at committee on November 8th, where the committee recommended that the staff go back and negotiate with the FIFA World Cup host committee sponsorship and incentives. Before you, I'm going to share really quickly what we discussed and requested. The sponsorship benefits include global exposure for the city with inclusion in FIFA World Cup promotional and branding opportunities, a feature in FIFA's official Know Before You Go Cities Guide. The Cities Guide will be available to South Florida residents with over 700,000 visitors. Designation of the official and exclusive FIFA World Cup 2026 Media Row in Loomis Park, where the host committee will send media to. This is expected to have a credential media attendance is estimated to from 5,000 to 20,000, with early numbers in 2026. Public benefits for Miami Beach residents include designating Miami Beach as an official FIFA World Cup watch party location. Target area is North Beach, where people can view the opening match, final match, and all matches taking place at the Hard Rock Stadium. This will be free to the public. The host committee will produce a kickoff concert with top national, international talent on the inaugural weekend of the first World Cup game played in Miami-Dade County. The concert will be free and open to the public and take place in the Loomis Park beachfront. A designated amount of resident front row area seating will be provided, and a legacy project. So the host committee will work to leverage fundraising and sponsorship efforts to provide accessible spaces for youth and promote community engagement in sports. The host committee's financial support for the legacy project will be based and contingent on its fundraising activity. The city's Parks and Recreation Department has identified 3 possible projects in North and Mid Beach. There's currently a hold to book the Miami Beach Convention Center. However, there's no official ask For the use of the convention center, the host committee may want to operate a ticketing center there or a media working center to conduct press conferences or to set up desks pending availability. Lastly is city sponsorship requests is what includes event sanctioning. So they would like to do a FIFA World Cup clean zone, so a zone of exclusivity similar to our Basel, so they can vet events that are going to be in their area and to make sure that there's no ambush marketing in the clean zone. That clean zone is detailed in the memo before you. Waiver of special event fees, square footage fees, and city police department off-duty administrative fees, fire department off-duty administrative fees, and beach concession fees. Sponsorship of city services, so in-kind services for up to $500,000, and this includes Miami Beach Fire, PD, sanitation, and any event-related city services, and a cash sponsorship in an amount of $1.5 million in sponsorship funding. It's proposed that 50%, $750,000 be provided in fiscal year 2025, and the remaining 50%, the $750,000, be budgeted and appropriated in the fiscal year 2026 budget cycle. And lastly, a waiver are pouring rights. We have a contract with PepsiCo, and so this would they are requesting a waiver of PepsiCo as Coca-Cola is one of their major sponsors. Again, today we have representatives from the World Cup host committee. We have Chief Operating Officer Ray Martinez and event producer Randy Freeman to answer any additional questions.
Thank you, Lizette. The one that caught my eye, and I don't know if this even falls into our hands, but is the sponsorship waiver. I don't know if Mr. City Attorney can opine on that. Is that something that is a legislative issue that the commission would take up?
The question.
So part of what the committee is requesting, if I understood correctly, given our deal, they wanted a sponsorship waiver for Pepsi.
We do have 4 waivers per year, and I believe that Ms. Arrogante has already started the process to allow them to have one of those.
Okay.
That's
Excellent.
correct.
So what we'd be looking at here is a $500,000 in-kind contribution and a $1.5 million cash contribution. I'll turn it over to my colleagues. I know what I'd be looking for, probably more from staff versus the sponsorship team, but certainly if people have questions for the sponsors, feel free to engage with them. But kind of what our previous history is for things like the Super Bowl, the Orange Bowl, various events. If we could quantify what we've done in the past, that's something I'd be interested in to essentially, gauge where we're at for this event versus what our opportunities have been in the past. I'll turn it over to my colleagues for what they'd like to take the discussion.
Yep, well,
Commissioner Fernandez or Bob?
So, thank you. I think it's a great opportunity and it's very exciting. I would actually like to hear from our marketing communications folks. Sorry, Melissa, to put you on the spot. But as a value, Super Bowl is a week, a weekend, 10 days, whatever you want to stretch that out to. This is over 7 weeks. Could you opine on the value of the media, the unearned media?
Sure. Good morning, Melissa Bertier, Director of Marketing and Communications. FIFA is how many weeks? 7 weeks.
33 days.
33 days. We have 7 games in Miami. I think it's incredible.
And so if we wanted to.
So I think in terms of the value, the value, I do think that it's a fair value.
So if we wanted to buy this kind of media exposure, would we be paying more than $2 million?
Much more.
Ballpark?
I would need to see, I don't have it in front of me, sorry, because this isn't my item, but it would be multi-millions. Yeah.
Okay. And for the FIFA folks, ooh, that's fun to say. I encourage everybody to say FIFA folks 10 times quickly. Is there any opportunity to collaborate in how Miami Beach is presented? Is there?
Absolutely.
We can shape the narrative a little bit to
Absolutely.
shine the
Yeah,
best
and-
possible light on what we offer here.
Yes, and thank you. Ray Martinez, I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the FIFA World Cup 2026 Miami Host Committee. It's a long name there, but
You can just say FIFA folks.
obviously we want that partnership. We want that, feedback for what Miami Beach wants to do. We don't want to come in and tell you what we're going to do. It's truly a partnership. of what we can do and what we'll be able to do as the event comes near. Similar to the Super Bowl, I was involved with the Super Bowl. I was the president of the host committee for the Super Bowl in 2020. We all remember how great that was, especially here for Miami Beach. You know, the difference is, as you pointed out, this is over a 33-day period, our matches that are going to be held here. It's also in June and July, which is typically a slower month for tourism and whatnot, where the Super Bowl is in February during peak time. So there's some, you know, very distinct added value to that. In light of that, also with soccer and what we're learning, you know, as a new soccer fan myself, learning that, you know, people will travel here just to be in the host city, even though they don't have a ticket to the match. You know, so they want to be part of the excitement. That's why the viewing parties are so important, not only at the Fan Fest, but throughout the communities. And, you know, something that we want to work together with Miami Beach on that as well.
So that's a great segue. So my last question, then I'll turn it over to my colleagues. You know, the band shell as a location for viewing parties and maybe even extension screen on Normandy Fountain is great. We've seen how successful it is with the enormous and enthusiastic and really happy crowds that show up. However, it is a significant number of people who flood into that area. And I know we're doing all kinds of waivers of cost of policing and all that sort of thing. But if we're going to have 7 screenings, or you know, whatever it ends up being, in that area, that's going to be 7 pretty significant crowd control police expenditures, and maybe Chief Acosta might be able to share some insight on that. Sorry to put you on the spot as well, but I guess today is pop quiz day. So, you know, it's not like, it's just to make sure that things don't go awry, and, you know, we don't have people who are joyous in their celebrations, climbing on light posts and getting hurt and all that kind of stuff, or people who are distraught and taking it out on parked cars. So, I mean, it's not Philadelphia, so we should be okay, but.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Deputy Chief Paul Acosta on behalf of the police department. Pop quiz, sometimes in school I didn't pay attention to the teacher, so I didn't hear the question in its entirety. I must admit, so if you can restate it for me.
Yeah, so the conversation was how great it is to have these viewing parties up in North Beach. We've had it before at the band shell, possibly an extension at the Normandy Fountain with an ancillary screen, but the cost of policing that to make sure that everyone leaves in the same shape that they got there, basically.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. It's not something that we are not capable of doing and providing as a department. We would have to allocate in advance a budget to carve out for FIFA, which we do plan on doing, because citywide, we do expect an influx of more people to our city in 2025 and 2026 as a result of the game. So obviously, we want to make sure that we provide enough and sufficient staffing for it, but it's not anything that we can't handle.
I have no doubt that you can handle it. That's not the concern. The concern is it going to be above and beyond the in-kind donations that we're making for police services throughout the city? Like, I guess that's the question that you guys will have to get to as we get to our budget process and figure out, you know, is the $500,000 spread across multiple departments going to cover what we would need for 7 different games in North Beach? And if not, how much more is that? And because that should be a consideration set as well.
Yes, ma'am. I feel more comfortable if we had an opportunity to go back and perform that analysis and understand.
Roughly speaking, and non-binding, what would that cost be for one game if you were doing it? Like when Argentina was.
Right. I would think somewhere perhaps around $25,000, I think, if we provide sufficient staffing, if we're doing both areas, both watch parties up in the north.
So it's not insignificant.
It's not. No.
Okay.
Could I just add, Commissioner Raquel Williams, Assistant City Manager, because we have this much lead time and this is a collaborative planning process with multiple jurisdictions, including Miami-Dade County, City of Miami, and others, we expect to be partnering with other agencies to ensure that we have our public safety component down pat for that time period. So just know that it won't just be Miami Beach that's activated at this time, but our entire community. So we do expect to partner.
Madam City Manager is correct.
Okay.
If I may add also, is because the ask is as a max is an up to 500,000. So from a budgetary perspective, that would be our number, I guess, theoretically. I think if you were asking if there were costs beyond that, the ask is only up to the $500,000. So.
Okay. I I don't want to be spending more than $500,000 if we don't have to, but I also don't want to have public safety, compromised in any way, because people get excited about their football.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to ask our CFO, traditionally other large events, let's say, activities that happen in our city, let's say during the month of March, how much do we spend on public safety during the month of March? Or altogether?
Actually, I'm going to ask Richard Hemhill, our budget officer, on that. I
Like
know
about
we budget
$5
for,
million?
during spring break. If you can come up and, how much? A little over $2 million.
Over $2 million. And I just think about that. We spent $2 million there on public safety and the negative impact that has in our economy. Whatever investment we make in FIFA 2026 will be such a great return on our investment, because let's just get it right. This is the single most watched sporting event in the world. And it's not just any other sporting activity. FIFA, it surpasses the Super Bowl, it surpasses the Olympics, it surpasses Formula One. And with a combined audience connecting billions of people across the globe, people that transcend borders, it transcends languages, it transcends social economic barriers. So this is just so spectacular, and it aligns with the type of community that we want to be. And not only that, the economic impact of over $500 million that's going to generate in our region. I think I read it was, or Lisa may have says 600,000 visitors in the area.
And actually, the economic impact number is more like 1.3 billion. If you go back to Super Bowl 2020, we did an economic impact study as part of that, and it was 572 million. FIFA did a preliminary economic impact for Miami-Dade, for Greater Miami, and they came back with a number 1.3 billion. I think that's personally low when you look at what happened in 2020 with the Super Bowl, but those are the numbers that they have put out there.
And so, and not only that, I think, this is so much more than just numbers. It's about enhancing our global profile as a city, boosting our tourism industry, and positioning our city as a premier destination for major international events. So in addition to, I think there's the world-class soccer fields that I read somewhere that as part of an investment that's being made. High-quality soccer fields.
Sure, that's the Legacy project, and that's contingent on the host committee's fundraising efforts, so that's something that they're working on.
But that would mean more accessible recreational spaces
Absolutely.
that are going to be available for our youth as part of the legacy of this project. So there's so much return for Miami Beach that even if the public safety investment exceeds the $500,000, the return on that investment is so much greater for our community. Mr. Chairman, thank you for sponsoring this item. This is a wise use of our dollars, and at the right time, I'm happy to make a motion on your item.
This is all of our items. This is six commissioners and a mayor, a city staff, and an entire community that is going to be hand in hand welcoming FIFA, welcoming one of the most iconic events in the entire world, the police department. So this is truly a collaborative effort I'm excited to embark upon with all of us. Commissioner Rosen-Gonzalez.
Nothing. I just want to emphasize what my colleague said by saying that this is one of the coolest things that's ever come to South Florida, hosting these 7 games. I can't even imagine the mayhem and pandemonium that is going to take place that entire, it's a month, right, of games. So I'm excited to support it. Hopefully, I know you guys will be super successful in your fundraising efforts, and hopefully we'll get at least one soccer field out of this, and I'm excited about the benefits package and hosting the media along Ocean Drive. I think it's just going to be a tremendous good PR for all of us, so congratulations.
Excellent. And before we close this out, just to get on the record, Miami Beach, like so many events, even though it's taking place at the broader county level, will really be the epicenter for this, whether it be for events from the TV broadcasts or things like that. But if the FIFA team could quantify, you're asking for $1.5 million cash contribution. What is the county stepping up in their efforts so we can essentially, gauge that?
So we had an initial ask with Miami-Dade County of 21 million cash, along with 25 million in kind and a $3 million legacy contribution. They made an adjustment at the board and approved the 10.5 million. They cut the 21 in half, 10.5 million cash, the 25 million in kind, and a 3 million legacy. There is an opportunity to go back to the county commission for the remaining, or the $10.5 million that was reduced in the initial legislation.
And courtesy of my colleague, Commissioner Bott, the City of Miami, I know we discussed this earlier, but just to put on the record.
Yes, we have an ask into the City of Miami for $5 million cash and $10 million in kind as well, which includes the use of Bayfront Park for the Fan Fest.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Please.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, Media Row. Media Row is going to be in our city, is that right?
Well, that's, the FIFA official media center is actually in Dallas. So similar to the Super Bowl was here, and you remember Radio Row and the convention center. So the media center for the FIFA, all of the 16 matches is actually in Dallas because they needed a convention center space for 9 months' time, and something that most cities could not commit to, but Dallas did. But we are getting inquiries and are going to have a lot of requests for media to come into, Miami. Obviously, there's a lot of interest in what's going on in Miami, and so that is what we will be pushing to Miami Beach and to.
Just to add to that, so we will have the official and exclusive media row where the Miami Host Committee will be funneling all of the media outlets to Loomis Park.
Right.
With our Ocean Drive background, and so.
Which is like what we experienced with the Super Bowl.
Right.
That, like, I remember Fox Sports. Like, I remember Fox Sports constantly. You had the Art Deco buildings and Ocean Drive, on the networks, and this is like that, but instead of just nationally, this would be international.
Correct.
Dissemination.
Correct. And while we know that some media outlets will occupy some space at the stadium, which is a natural occurrence because the games are happening there.
Of course.
We know that we're going to get a lot of media visibility because of the exclusivity offered by Media Row.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Chair, at the right time, I'd like to make a motion to send this item back to the City Commission with a favorable recommendation to direct the city administration to negotiate an agreement with FIFA World Cup 2026 Miami on the terms as presented with the host committee.
Sounds like the right time.
I'll second
So
that.
moved.
Excellent.
Thank you.
The second was
Me.
Commissioner Rock, okay. All in favor?
Thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
Joe passed unanimously, thank you.
Excellent. Look forward to this. Let's go to our next time certain. We have 10:45 time certain for NB3.
Thank you. NB3 is discuss a resolution of the mayor and the city commission of the city of Miami Beach, Florida, establishing as the policy of the city of Miami Beach that medical marijuana is a medicine and not an illicit recreational drug, that employees of the city who are prescribed medical marijuana by a properly licensed medical professional in compliance with all requirements set forth in Florida law shall be permitted to use this properly prescribed medication during non-working hours and sufficiently in advance of any scheduled work shift in order to ensure that the employee is not impaired by the use of the medical marijuana while on the job, and directing the city administration to draft and promulgate written directives effectuating the city policy, MB3.
Okay, so let's face it, it's a controversial item. Although we are designated a drug-free workplace, medical marijuana is legal and seen as a prescribed medicine in the state of Florida. When we drug test, there are certain drugs like Xanax that we do not test for, correct?
We
or
actually,
different pain medications?
would you like me to respond now or at
Sure.
the end of your comments? Thank you, Commissioner. Marla Alpizar, City of Miami Beach Human Resources Director. Through the chair, the answer to your question is all of those drugs that are scheduled drugs under federal schedules are tested for. Let's say I test positive for Adderall, which is on the scheduled list, Schedule 3. I would then show the medical officer providing my test with my prescription, and I would not be a positive. I would just be, even though it came up on the drug test, I would not test positive because I would be using my prescription as required.
Okay, so then we would add medical marijuana to this. If you were tested for it and you had a prescription for it, then it would be treated like Adderall or any of these other drugs, correct?
So to answer your question, it's a little more complicated because the prescription, it's under federal schedules, it's a Schedule 1 drug. It is not a Schedule 3 drug. And so it is not legal under federal law like it's legal under state law. So we're in an intersection of difficult conflict between state and federal law. We do anticipate that the federal government will move marijuana. They're studying moving it to a Schedule 3 drug, what will be treated like other controlled substances.
Right now, for example, in the state of Florida, if you are an employee in the state of Florida and you have a prescription for medical marijuana, given that it is legal in the state of Florida, how are they treating employees within the state?
Very carefully, like we are. When a person, under all laws, federal and state, when a person has a medical disability or a disability or a medical condition that might impact their core functions of their job, and they say to you as an employer, I would request a reasonable accommodation so that I may use this medicine for my health condition. You have to treat those as individual cases. You see what we can reasonably accommodate or not. And we have done that with, so far, in the history of, since I've been here, 2 employees that had medical marijuana cards, where we say, is this reasonable or not reasonable to be able to provide an accommodation in the case of an employee that theoretically is not a safety sensitive position, is, say you have a desk job. We might be able to say, okay, we can reasonably accommodate your use and not, ding you as a positive underneath our labor agreements. In the case of a person that's in a safety sensitive position, we would need to be thinking through what would be appropriate for that employee. Maybe a reasonable accommodation is leave. Maybe a reasonable accommodation is a light duty position that doesn't have them, driving a city vehicle, or, and this would be any drug, not just marijuana. It might be a painkiller that a person might need to take. These are individualized conversations based on that individual person's medical needs. So,
And you don't think there's any stigmatization coming to you and saying, hey, I have a medical marijuana card? That's what I would like to avoid. I don't want that person to have to be singled out to come to you to get a medicine that is legal under the state of Florida, like many other prescriptions, and I'd like to try to find a way that this body recognizes medical marijuana in a compassionate way without stigmatizing anyone. I would like to say that Amazon, Microsoft, Meta, Google, Netflix, none of them drug test anymore. We have these random drug testing policies. I don't think it's great for employee morale. I understand that it's necessary, I suppose, if you're operating heavy machinery. Although I would say that, people have supervisors, and that's what the supervisor is for. If somebody shows up intoxicated, then obviously they're going to have a problem. So I'd like to find out, I was under the assumption, I thought that recreational marijuana was going to pass at the ballot. I looked here, overwhelmingly 60, 70% in our precincts have passed. Medical marijuana passed by between 70 and 80% across Miami Beach in every single precinct. So I don't know. I'm not going to follow. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say before I move it forward with a positive or negative recommendation.
One thing I'd like to hear more of, trying to recall where the most controversial things lied in, did we ever close out essentially the grant thing that came up? Because I think the two things that I am most focused on, I have no issues with this. However, if this would have a significant financial or economic impact on the grants that we're able to apply to, and then also, the legality, I'd certainly like legal to weigh in on what some of the implications are about this. It's not that I have a personal or moral or somehow moral higher ground authority on this. I just want to know what the perhaps unintended consequences for our broader city in administration would be.
Can I say? We kind of did a deep dive into that. We found that it's minimal, correct?
So I think, let me start by saying the drug-free workplace concept is tied to the grant funding. So the drug-free workplace concept is meant and is written as law, federal law, to be a compassionate approach to assisting employees that have possible, just because you use a substance doesn't mean you necessarily have an addiction or anything, but the drug-free workplace originally was a compassionate legislation to say, if you're a drug-free workplace, you can test your employees for safety purposes and provide to them the counseling and the medical care that they need in order to avoid addiction. And so we do approach our drug-free workplace policy, which is tied to our federal grants, through the compassionate approach. If you have an addiction, we try to help you find the right care. Yes, ma'am.
But that wasn't the question. If we looked at it and there were no grants, right? We did not lose out on 1 penny of grant funding, correct?
We are still a drug-free
zero.
We're
So
still a
it's-
drug-free workplace, and so we sign and authorize in our federal grant forms that we are a drug-free workplace. The administration does not recommend that we stop being a drug-free workplace as a status of it's a designation. We suggest that we continue to sign our federal grant forms that we are a drug-free workplace in order to maintain our federal funding. And there are, I don't remember the number, there are a number of grants tied to that federal funding. The small number that you're remembering is the amount of a discount that we would stop getting from the state of Florida for our workers' compensation program if we were not a drug-free workplace. So if we were not a drug-free workplace, there is a discount because we are a drug-free workplace that we would receive, and we would stop receiving that $30,000 a year discount on our workers' compensation insurance that we provide to the state of Florida. So we stand to lose federal grant opportunities if we were not a drug-free workplace, and we stand to lose a small discount from the state of Florida on workers' compensation insurance payments that we must make if we were not a drug-free workplace. So this administration does not recommend stopping that designation. Yes,
So
sir?
that $30,000 is across the board? That's the entire amount? Or is
So-
that like per policy?
Federal grants, we apply for various federal grants every year, and we are certifying that we are a drug-free workplace.
Quantify that.
Millions, I mean, it's a lot. In the case of
That
just
we wouldn't
the,
be able to apply for if we were not a drug-free workplace.
we
not
just wouldn't be
true.
able to certify that we were, and that's one of the
Well, hold on,
requirements of
excuse me.
some grants.
Wait,
In the case of the discount, that is just,
I'm sorry, if we could run back through that again. So we are right now a federally recognized drug-free workplace, which allows us to apply for grants if, I'm sorry, if we can allow this to continue. We're a drug-free workplace right now,
yes.
and that allows us to apply for grants. If we would take action that would deem us not to be a drug-free workplace, there are specific grants we wouldn't be able to apply for, and if that is correct, if we could quantify the amount.
can I just clarify?
No, I'm sorry.
Well,
If
I want to answer the
no,
question.
I'm sorry, I didn't ask you the
You
question.
can apply, you
I'm
just
sorry,
don't
I didn't ask you
certify.
the question. Marla,
So this is.
nobody interrupts you.
I think
I'm
that
asking her a
I'm
question
gonna say
instead.
what the commissioner wants me to say in the fact that we think that we can have a policy. We can't throw out our drug testing, but we can have a policy that that maintains our drug-free workplace and still allows us to make allowances for people who have medical conditions. And that is sort of like threading a needle. Just because we talk about your desire or to do or not do a medical marijuana policy does not necessarily mean we have to throw out the drug-free workplace piece. It just makes it really complex to thread this needle. And so all of the background information that the commission has been provided with, or the committee has been provided with, about what our other jurisdictions are doing, about how the laws are unfolding as we speak, about what might come with the federal government making changes. It's really a dynamic and complex topic right now. And if we stay on this path of trying to be at the forefront of what you want to do with policy, it is complex. It's not going to be easy, and it is going to be a lot of needle threading. But we don't necessarily have to throw out the drug-free workplace designation.
Thank you. Commissioner Rosen-Gonzalez, I'd like to turn it over to you real quick before I do. That's something you'd have my support for, is if we're able to essentially thread a needle where we're making accommodations but still maintaining the status as a drug-free workplace. I'll kick it over to you to where you want to take this.
Okay. First and foremost, I think we could still, I mean, if it was up to me, I would get rid of this whole random spooky testing thing in the first place. I mean, I work at Miami-Dade College. None of us are randomly drug tested. I don't even think that MDCPS, I was a teacher there. I know that they don't do that either. I'd like to follow the big five, you know, the Microsoft, Apple, Amazon. I mean, they're not drug testing. We all know that Nancy and Ronald Reagan created this just say no to drugs policy, and it was just a big boogeyman. If somebody's not performing their job correctly, it's going to be noticeable to the people around them, especially if they are intoxicated. That said, and by the way, if we were not a drug-free workplace, we could still apply for those federal grants and get the funding. At the end of the forum, you just say, we're not a drug-free workplace. The whole state of Colorado, they're not going to say to all of Colorado and California, you can't have any federal grant money because drugs are legal in your state, right? So across the nation, there is a movement, you know, against this. It's kind of an enlightened compassion movement. Anyway, if you're willing to support Myra's suggestion, which is kind of like what you want us to be able to allow for prescription medical marijuana. I just worry about the stigmatization embedded in all of it. If that's all I'm going to get, fine. If that's what threading the needle means, it's a start. And, you know, if the federal government changes this at some point, I guess we can move in that direction.
Just a question to our attorneys. You know, what are legal challenges that we as an employer can face if an employee causes harm or damage as a result of any change of policy that we enact?
Hi, Rob Rosenwald, Deputy City Attorney. So are you speaking of, for example, somebody came to work high and got into a crash, and then would we have liability?
Any damage?
And the answer is we're liable for our employees' actions, no matter what they do. We have what's called vicarious liability for their actions. So if an employee gets into a car crash, we are liable for it if they're doing it within the course and scope of their duties. Is there more of a risk that somebody could show up to work high and be driving and crash? I suppose there is some incremental risk, but there's also the risk that somebody could show up to work drunk, someone could show up on some other drug.
Sure.
And so we don't, while there always is some risk and anyone can sue for anything, we don't consider it to be a prohibitive risk.
And so I just wonder also, you know, for example, our insurance premiums. Our insurance premiums are based on the policies that we currently have in place. And I just wonder, have we studied what could be the potential impact to our city's insurance premiums if our drug testing policies are seen as insufficient or changed? You know, do we run the risk of those costs going up?
Keep in mind, we only have insurance for overage coverage on workers' compensation claims. Every other form of insurance that we would pay claims on, the city is self-insured. So we don't pay for insurance. We don't have any special rate. We just pay the claims out of the city's funds. And we've deemed that financially beneficial to do so. Very few situations do we have some small area where we have a private outside insurance company, and one of those is for workers' comp claims, I believe, over $2 million. And
One or two, I don't remember
and
exactly.
and that's where that 30% comes in. But I want to make clear that it is not at all clear, and I think it's trending the other way. It's trending towards, you can still say that you are a drug-free workplace if you allow medical marijuana. Just last week, there was a trial court decision. It's out of Hillsborough County. It is just a trial court, so it's not binding on us. We'll see what happens on appeal and see if that gets upheld on appeal. But that trial court held that what the drug-free workplace and Florida law requires is that you not use marijuana while you are at the workplace and you not show up to work high. But if you have a medical marijuana card, the city must.
But Mr. Attorney, I certainly understand that, but we also need to keep in consideration that while tests for alcohol impairment, for example, are well established, I don't know of any universally accepted or reliable test to determine whether marijuana impairment actively exists in an employee. And so while I get what the courts have ruled and the importance of that ruling, how do we determine whether someone in the workplace is impaired or not?
Well, we do have training programs, especially for police officers, for detecting drug impairments, even though if somebody is not, isn't going to take a blow test and test positive for alcohol. So it is something that can be done. Marla has information about testing that is either already done or is in the very near pipeline that we will have access to. The one thing I would point out about this case out of Hillsborough County was it was a 25-page decision, and the employee who wanted to use medical marijuana was a paramedic driving a fire truck, and the court said Hillsborough County had to allow them to use medical marijuana. Now, again, only a trial court decision, may be appealed, we're not sure. We generally only take rules of precedence from appellate court decisions, so this one has a little ways to go. But the dearth of case law that we have so far on this particular issue makes the existence of this one trial court decision particularly noteworthy, because there isn't much law at all on this.
I really believe that my colleague is trying to do something important for employees who have been prescribed medical marijuana by duly licensed medical professionals and in ways that comply with the Florida law. And I understand, that employees can use it outside of their work shifts, so that they're not feeling the effects of it while they're working. I just get very concerned about the unintended consequences. So the motion that's been presented, I just want to understand it right. It would allow it on a case-by-case basis. In other words, we wouldn't change our policy, but it would be on the hands of the administration to allow it on a case-by-case basis. Is that what's before us now?
So when I referred to a case-by-case basis, I'm referring to what we're doing now. What is proposed by resolution by Commissioner Rosen-Gonzalez, I don't know how to speak to what that would do to change our policies. We would have to figure out what changes would be needed that we can accomplish. One of the things about this new testing that's coming down the pike is everyone is saying, oh, this new testing looks like it might be more beneficial. It's not measuring a 30-day exposure to a drug. It's measuring a much more narrow window. It's much closer to the concept of impairment. We have struggled with having a provider be able to provide us the drug sheets about the sheets, the spec sheets about the testing, and to provide to us the pricing that we can take to procurement. Like, it's so new that we're struggling with getting the answers that we need on the new testing. It's coming. We're going to be able to get there. We're not there yet. On the case of the other thing that is a complication in threading the needle is even if we say we're going to have this type of a policy approach that the commission decides, whatever that looks like in a resolution, there are things we can't waive. For example, if you have a CDL license, and that is that whole license is regulated by the Federal Department of Transportation, you cannot use any marijuana and have a CDL license, and some of our jobs require a CDL license, and so
I
you
have a
can't
question.
avoid those kinds of job by job, not only
It's
medical
about
condition by medical
threading the needle, and we'll leave it to staff to, quantify and qualify what exactly that is.
Right.
But
I just
Commissioner
don't want to
Fernandez-
represent that.
I just want to follow up
It's
on that
simple.
because let's take this resolution. Once this resolution is approved, the operational responsibility will naturally fall to the city manager, to the city administration to implement it.
Yes.
And so I get very concerned about the complexities of this issue, including the compliance, as we've stated here, with federal and with state laws, and ensuring that our city's operational needs are met. Can't we propose that we, give the city manager, the ability just to determine what this policy should be? Maybe I know at times marijuana is prescribed to cancer patients, and at times it's prescribed to patients HIV and AIDS and other illnesses. I don't want to politicize something that is so sensitive to the health of our workforce, who deserves every consideration possible in their treatment and in their recuperation. But allow the city manager, tell the city manager, Mr. Manager, this is important to us. We want to make sure that individuals who are facing, grave, illnesses, if they're dealing with a certain stage of cancer, that they absolutely need this medication, that the city manager be able to do that. But I don't want to have employees, handling credit card transactions in the city who we can't really verify whether they're inebriated or not at the time of that transaction, or handling other types of issues. So I don't know if there's a possibility to do that.
Yeah.
Mr. Attorney.
Well, the long and the short of it is, I discussed this very recent case, which was very far-reaching and went towards allowing medical marijuana for everyone, even fire truck drivers.
I wouldn't feel comfortable with that.
I'm sorry?
I would not feel comfortable with that, and I cannot
Well,
support
if that became the law, we would have to follow it, but right now, it's not at the point where we have to follow it. But I only point out the dearth of case law and interpretation on any of these leaves you the freedom right now to do what you want. If you just want to allow the city commission to, and the city administration to do what it's doing in a case-by-case reasonable accommodation basis, you can do that. You could ask for something more restrictive and say that we're not going to do that. And there aren't any cases saying you can't do that besides this one trial court decision that just came out. So it's very much all of a policy call right now, just keeping in mind that as these new cases start rolling out and then appellate courts start ruling on it, it will clarify itself some more, and you may have to adjust what it was you wanted to do. So you can be right in the middle and do what the state of Florida, what Miami-Dade County, and what we are currently doing. You can do something more aggressive towards allowing it, as Commissioner Rosen-Gonzalez wants to do. You could do something more restrictive and not allow it in a lot of situations if you wanted, and still get away with it right now, keeping in mind that as the case law develops, you may have to probably tweak what you do.
Commissioner Rosen-Gonzalez, then Commissioner Bott.
Okay. I just want to define before Commissioner Bott speaks that what this is employees of the city of Miami Beach who have been prescribed medical marijuana by a duly licensed medical in compliance with all applicable Florida laws and regulations should be permitted to use such properly prescribed medication during non-working hours. That is the policy that we would be passing.
And Marla, does that thread the needle?
What does that mean?
Essentially, what Marla was saying is to maintain our status as a drug-free workplace, we can make reasonable accommodations without just opening the door and waving in medical marijuana. And that essentially threads the needle of maintaining that drug-free workplace moniker while still making above and beyond reasonable accommodations. Am I phrasing that correctly?
So I believe that what the commissioner is proposing in the resolution is more of a, is not so much giving the administration as much individual case-by-case basis, because her resolution doesn't say even something as simple as except for CDL drivers to meet requirements under federal law, and except for possible safety sensitive positions. So
maybe the best way.
This is a much more broad policy that is proposed that.
So maybe part of the motion could be, and then Commissioner Bott, I'll turn it over to you, but where I'm going with this is part of the motion, maybe a friendly amendment to Commissioner Rosa Gonzalez, is have staff come back and put some exclusions for the type of sensitive positions that might not be able to be brought under this umbrella, that would have to go for a one-off, case-by-case basis. Commissioner Bott.
So, you know, I think we are, as I forget who said it, but at the vanguard of this changing dynamic across the country. And if Hillsborough County, not noted for its wildly progressive views on anything, is recognizing that this is a change that's coming, I'm sure it's, you know, progress is never linear. It always looks like this a bunch. So I think we're kind of at the beginning of this mess. I'm inclined to actually do what you just suggested, Joe, which is take Commissioner Rosa Gonzalez's proposal and have staff see if there needs to be one or two little guardrails like the CDL license, and then come back and let us vote on making that a policy. Because I feel like, you know, as it stands now, anybody could be processing credit card transactions or performing CPR after having a 3-martini lunch, and we wouldn't know about it necessarily. I mean, you might, hopefully, they don't hide it that well, but there's nothing to stop people from doing dumb things with or without our policy.
I will take it. I'll take what you guys are proposing. We will come back. Do you want to come back here with an we don't, because we don't have the ordinance. We have to kind of draft the policy, correct? So
It would be a resolution.
it would be a resolution. So so if I move the resolution forward to the full commission with the exemption of certain employee categories, which, by the way, in the future will not matter anyway because they could sue us and the state of Florida. I would throw out THC altogether when we test, but I mean, whatever. I'll take what you guys are proposing and we can start there.
Let's move forward in increments. Let's move forward in increments and hope that as we move forward judiciously, that the state and national law catches up with us so that we end up traveling in parallel paths, that we give people in need more of what we want, what they need. We are not going to walk away from the compassionate care if anybody has a problem. There should be no stigma. I mean, I know there are plenty of people who take mental health medications that are far more reluctant to talk about those prescription drugs than they are about medical marijuana cards. So I would like to destigmatize any medication that you need, because better living through science is a thing. And, you know, let's move forward in a compassionate, progressive, but measured way.
But can I just say, like, let's say that you were on an antidepressant. You don't have to go and sit down and have a conversation with Marla and say, you know, I'm on an antidepressant.
No. My point was people I know people who feel less comfortable owning up to being on antidepressants than they would ever feel uncomfortable about talking about medical marijuana.
But
so
I would like to get to a place where, you know, if you had a medical marijuana prescription, You don't have to go and have that discussion
Well,
with
we're-
Marla, and we're trying to get there.
That's
So
what
let's,
we're trying to do.
direction.
we're moving, okay, so,
So do you want to make a motion?
yes, so
With
I'll
that
make the
amendment.
motion. Rob, let's move this resolution forward with some exemptions for certain employee categories.
Okay, and
Directing
maybe
staff to maybe
HR
work on
could
that.
put in some recommendations for implementation that they think would work.
Yes.
I'm happy to work with the attorney and the commissioner on suggestions and ideas, and they can arrive at a policy towards the commission that will achieve what you are all seeking.
If I,
You look so happy, Commissioner.
if I can help, because I think there were a
So
couple of
happy.
elements there. But I think it sounds like this would return to commission with a recommendation to direct administration to develop a policy to allow medical marijuana within limitations, but with the requirement that the city maintain its drug-free workplace.
Love that, Jason. That was so well
Marla, is
worded.
that-
That's
Marla,
perfect.
that's, okay.
All right.
That sounds good.
Might become an
long time in the
incentive
making
to
for you
stop the
commissioners.
bleed of
Do we need a second on that?
Does somebody want to second my motion? Somebody's
I'll
going to
second
second it? Thank you.
All in favor? Hearing none opposed? Passes. Thank you.
Excellent. Long time in the making, so I'm happy for that. Let's get to
It's going to have
some,
unintended consequences,
Everything does. And we'll fix it as we go.
like Ocean Drive.
for some of the staff, MB 25, the residential solid waste contract.
MB 25, discuss a residential solid waste collection contract and a situational report on it. MB 25.
Brett,
Good to go?
open it up.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Chairman Magazine, fellow board members. Today, we're going to talk about the residential solid waste contract that the city has. And just to clarify, this is not the non-exclusive agreements that we have with Waste Connections or Waste Management for commercial and multifamily 9 and above. This is very specific to the residential exclusive franchise agreement that we have with Waste Connections, who in one form or another through different companies has been providing the service for the last 14 years. This is only pertaining to the approximately 5,674 single-family homes we have, and it affects 1,400, I believe, multifamily units that are in the 2 to 8 category. So I just wanted to put that on the record to clarify it so we all know what we're talking about today, and there's no confusion. So I will get started. I'm just going to try to give a little bit of a history of these contracts, where we're at today, and what staff recommends at this point going forward. So if PJ could put the slides up, that would be great. Huh? New the new PowerPoint guy. I'm borrowing from Commissioner Suarez. So you can go to the next slide, please. So in 2010, the city of Miami Beach entered into a residential, single-family, and multifamily 2 to 8 exclusive agreement for solid waste services with a company at the time called Choice Environmental Services of Miami. That contract was for a duration of 5 years. The agreement provided the city with the option to renew it for up to 3 years of 1 additional terms, which in fact they did. In 2014, the City Commission authorized a First Amendment to the agreement consenting to a name change of the contractor from Choice, which was then purchased by Progressive Waste Solutions of Florida, who had the contract with no other material changes to those contracts. Upon expiration of the initial term of the agreement, the City Commission on July 8th, 2015 approved a 1-year extension with a directive to City Administration at that point in time to prepare an RFP to go out to bid for future residential disposal and waste services. In 2015, the administration presented and the City Commission approved the issuance of RFP 2015-258 G for the collection of disposal of residential solid waste, trash, bulk waste, and operations of the city green waste facility. In 2016, the Commission provided further direction to administration to negotiate and extend the contract with Waste Connection for the remaining 2 1-year extension terms that extended the contract until 2018. Following the review and evaluation of the RFP submittals, it was deemed that Waste Connections was the best qualified firm to continue to provide the residential service. In 2019, the city entered into another agreement with Waste Connections, extending the contract to 2023 with the option of up to 3 one-year additional renewal terms provided by the contractor is not in default under the agreement. The city is in the second one-year renewal term with Waste Connections, which will expire on December in 2025. Where we are today, Waste Connections has indicated to the city that they will not be able to renew the agreement after December 25 under the existing terms. The extension has to be renewed by both parties mutually. And so to just explain why that, where it is, the contract that we currently have is incredibly beneficial to the city. A lot has changed in the marketplace in the last 5 years. And sometimes, businesses get to a point where, financially it's difficult to continue under those same terms. And I concur with their position, and I understand where they're coming from. We ask for a lot in that contract, and it becomes, over time where it's not possible to renew it under the existing terms, and we completely understand that. So we're basically on the clock right now, and we have to make some decisions, and that's what, in my recommendations, after we see a couple more slides of where the market is, we're going to get into.
Let's go through those quickly and tell us where we're at, where our options are, what your recommendation is.
Absolutely. Staff's research shows that in the state of Florida, based on recent bids submitted over the last 4 years, there have been dramatic rate increases in solid waste services, averaging from 50% or higher in a lot of different municipalities. And if you'll see in the next slide, that's up there. This is kind of a snapshot into the marketplace. It's not every municipality because cities have different times when they go out to bid, but these are some of the most recent ones. And
synopsis here of this slide, though, is these rates are increasing dramatically across the board.
There's two parts to the synopsis. One, that's correct. The rates are going up significantly, and they have all since COVID. But number two, you have to understand all of the municipalities that we're looking at here all have curbside service. And what that means is there's a cart tipper type truck that comes up to the house and dumps the cart that's put in the front. We don't have that service here when it comes to our residential solid waste. We have a very specialized service that only one municipality in Broward and Miami-Dade County do, which is side yard, backyard service, which is used by approximately 80% of the single-family homeowners today. So it's a service that is really used and enjoyed by the residents. And
that will be maintained through your recommendation?
Correct. I would not recommend making any change to that. I have never heard a complaint about it. I think people find it to be a very nice service that's provided by the hauler. Some people have, disabilities and are unable to do that. So to have someone either come to their side of their house or in their backyard and take it out for them, I think is a big, advantage. So I would not recommend making any changes to the way that service is provided.
And one thing I believe that we should all keep in mind going forward as we deal with traffic in this city is certainly I think it would be premature to make a decision now, but in terms of for our next contract, whether we start thinking about whether to include that service, the backyard pickup, because it, just from my simplistic thinking, it could really impact traffic because the amount of time that these waste hauling trucks are going to be out front because so my thought is, I'm not saying one way or another, but one thing that we should consider going into the next contract is some type of analysis, is that compounding, excuse the pun, traffic, because presumably the trucks would be out in front of any residents, largely multifamily. I'm thinking about the smaller multifamily houses along West Avenue and Sunset Harbor, something like that, where if they have to go into the backyard and pick those up, is that compounding traffic? Just something to think about going forward in analysis.
I would tell you this. I don't believe, as particularly as it relates to the multifamily, it's very segmented how much they service. It's really like 2 to 8 units. I don't really believe, for the most part, you take West Avenue, for example, there are really many, if not any units that may fall into that category. I believe most of them are above that size. This is in very pocketed areas that we have this. It won't change per se, the amount of truck traffic. I mean, and I think it takes a little bit of time extra to go and, to someone's house and service. So I don't necessarily think with this particular contract that that's an issue.
But
Now,
regardless, we're not discussing that for this. I shouldn't have
Right.
even interjected with that.
But I want to just explain to you as what the current level of service is, and then, I'll get into my recommendations.
Okay.
Yes.
We have people purchasing 20, 30, 40 million dollar homes that are paying millions of dollars in taxes, and to not extend this service to get their garbage can is going to cause an uproar, because people are already complaining, oh my gosh, they purchased this home. And also the thousands of residents that live in single family homes across the city that have had this benefit forever. So
Yeah,
you'd
so
be
that's not being
removing a
discussed
benefit.
for this.
I know, but I would just like to tell you that I don't think that this is a positive thing, given that the amount of taxes paid and the benefits that single-family homeowners have had. This would be a massive change. It would mean like
Which we're not
waking up and
discussing.
dragging. Okay, but you brought it up, so I just wanted to
I said
address
as
it.
we look
Sometimes I just
forward
like
into
to
the
frame
future.
things, because sometimes you live in a condo and and you haven't lived in a single-family home here, so this has to be represented on some level. It's important to understand that too, especially given the amount of taxes that people are paying.
Okay. Which we can discuss in several years. I just threw something out for discussion.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Yeah. I think, given the significant recent rate increases that we've seen in other jurisdictions, I think, it's been mentioned and it's in our analysis, similar services have increased by an average of 50% since 2019. And also, given the very unique services, and I'm now going to take your flip approach, we get something great here in Miami Beach that our residents are actually very grateful to have, and I think they're willing to pay for it. And it's that backyard, side yard service, which I understand is more labor intensive than the standard curbside collection. But our residents, I never hear them complain about our residential contract for these services. I want there to be stability and continuity right now, and I saw that staff is recommending that we continue with Waste Connections, and I'm happy to support that because it is. I just feel the service is great. I think there's other issues that we're going to have to discuss in the future about, other companies that pay franchise and license fees, and we need to figure out what we do with them. But in this case, with the residential services, I'm all for us keeping this contract.
Commissioner.
I would like to add that I'm in favor of this too. Not only do we know the crew that comes by our homes and picks up our garbage or trash, but we actually had a party for Saul and his crew. That's how much.
That's how great they are.
That's how much everyone in the neighborhood loves our crew.
Like they know them by name.
Pardon?
They know them by name.
Yeah, everybody knows Saul and the entire crew by name, and they really do go above and beyond. If you put out a box, they take it away for. I mean, they're wonderful. So I'm okay with this.
I just want to mention a couple things because it's important.
Yeah, I think you have broad support. I don't want to speak for Commissioner Bott, but I think you have broad support. I'll let you kind of wrap it up. But
I'm just a couple things, and I appreciate all the support. And really, I think this is really an important step, in our future as it relates to this. But what staff is recommending, as Commissioner Fernandez said, is we recommend enter into a long-term agreement, with Waste Connections, which, fortunately they are a good partner and they are willing to enter into those negotiations. We're asking that, allow staff to do that, come back in January with some terms for a new agreement to be most effective and provide the best structured agreement and price stability. We feel that a long-term agreement is the best way to go. The only thing that, we're asking is obviously there has to be a bid waiver in that process, which that has to be passed by, I believe, 5/7 vote by the commission. But we feel that will ensure the same levels of service, the continued use of the green waste facility, which will continue to be provided in that new extension, and just, putting together a really good agreement that will keep pricing structure, unlike if we went out to bid, where I would tell you that the marketplace would see it go up off the wall.
And the one thing I would just say through the chair, there's always room for improvement. While we celebrate the great service that we get twice a week in garbage pickup at our homes, I would say, the one areas where I do get feedback on is, the bulk pickups. They're not always the most reliable, and there's improvement there. So as you guys go back and negotiate a long-term contract, just keep that in mind. That's an area where I do feel that that there could be improvement. And I just also want to confirm, this contract also includes the operation of our green waste facility.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Absolutely. At 2800 Meridian, which is open to residents Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. And I just want to point out what it takes. It does take yard waste, but we also take electronic waste and textiles free of charge to all Miami Beach residents as long as they have their ID.
I echo what Commissioner Fernandez said. I would like some sort of bulk pickup across neighborhoods. By the way, can you imagine what that will do for the sanitation department that has to go out into some areas where people just start to pile on and you get piles of garbage, especially in some areas in North Beach. I haven't seen it so much in South Beach, but if we were able to get that bulk pickup and people would know that, like, let's say that it wasn't weekly, like City of Miami, because I know I owned a house at one point in City of Miami, and every single Monday we could put anything that you wanted out in the street, and they would stop by and pick it up, right? And
we need that in the areas where we have apartment buildings.
yeah, so I would say that if we're willing to negotiate a long-term contract and take the rate increase, that we look really hard at getting once a month bulk pickup. It doesn't have to be weekly, but once a month, whatever you put out in your yard, they're gonna pick up and see what you can get.
Right. The way it currently works right now is any resident, that's under the purview of this contract can call up and they get 6 free bulk pickups a year from Waste Connections. We can look at,
But we like
revising
the
that
idea
number.
of just, here's the problem, is, when you're throwing something out, sometimes it could be like a last minute decision. Sometimes you call and you don't get an immediate response from them. So it's not the most seamless process, which is why I would advocate for the once a month bulk pickup, and everybody just knows, like, the second Monday of the month, put your stuff out and we're gonna come by and get it. And I know that's a big shift, but like I said, given the amount of property taxes that everybody in the city is really paying, I think that this is a service that will really go a long way with making all residents across Miami Beach happy. When you live in a multifamily smaller building and you have to take your stuff and go to the dumpster, it's tough.
And
Let's say you're a single mom, right? And you want to throw out your sofa. It's one thing to get it down to the curb. You can probably grab a couple of guys or some people in your neighborhood and try to get it there. But to take that sofa, now you've got to find a truck, okay? You've got to take the sofa. So this is the type of service that really we need. It's essential, Brad. It's not so hard. It really penalizes,
So we have it. We have 6, but to your point, given that this contract, correct me if I'm wrong, Brad, it goes up to 8-unit buildings. Okay, so
That's correct.
So those are our smaller buildings, and they usually deal with much more limited space and much more limited back of house facilities. I would even say, maybe we should be speaking. Maybe do we want to bifurcate bulk to see, how can we have many other cities? It's not just the city of Miami. Many other cities do have that weekly pickup. Because the thing is, if you only have 6, if you're dealing with an apartment building of up to 8 units, at the beginning, at the end of every month, you're going to be dealing with bulk waste pickup issues. You have people moving in and you have people moving out, and people leave their things behind. And so while for single family residential homes, the 6 pickups a year might be absolutely adequate, if you are an apartment building and you have someone moving in and out every month, you need more than just 6. And you're dealing with that in those up to 8-unit properties. And maybe, maybe we need to get creative in what we do. And so I think what you're hearing from us, we're supporting this bid waiver because of the excellent service that they're providing to our single-family homes and to our residents with that backyard, side yard services. There's room for improvement on the bulky waste pickup. And Mr. Chair, at the right time, I'm happy to make a motion to send this back to commission with a favorable recommendation.
Yeah, let's do so now.
If I can, I think what I'm hearing is a return to commission with a favorable recommendation, provide a bid waiver and direct the administration to enter into negotiations for a long-term agreement with Waste Connections of Florida for residential solid waste contract.
Yeah, and I also want to incorporate in that, giving them the ability to explore creatively what they can do in terms of bulky waste, because it will help even with the issues with alleyways and cleanliness throughout the city. It'll help advance the goals that we're all aligned with.
We could show it with improved bulk service, and we'll see what they come up with.
Yeah.
That was a motion by Commissioner Fernandez.
Yes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay.
I don't want to tie their hands. I want
All
them
in
to think
favor?
creatively.
Aye.
Thank you.
Wow, I appreciate it, and thank you. This went a lot easier than the commercial waste stuff, I tell you. Thank you all.
Maybe not expect that ease when we get back there again. How about we move on to NB4, discussion of our parking efforts.
MB4. MB4, discuss the resolution of the mayor and city commission of the city of Miami Beach, Florida, accepting the recommendation of the Finance and Economic Resiliency Committee as April 19, 2024 meeting to accept the city administration's update on the city of Miami Beach Parking Department enforcement efforts, NB4.
Excellent, thank you. And where I was thinking, Jose, welcome. Want to give an overview of your efforts. Thank you for, I know you're wearing dual hats at the moment. I'm sure you're incredibly busy. Parking enforcement has become one of our tools in a multi-pronged toolkit when we're looking at public safety issues, not only for our special events like spring break and things like that, Memorial Day weekend, those were critical tools, but kind of 52 weeks a year. What I'd be looking to do is kind of keep this here at committee, especially as I believe we're looking for a permanent parking director. So let's hear an update on you, have some back and forth dialogue on what's working, what's not, where we're at. But keep this item open to maybe come back in a couple of months for updated analysis for where we stand. So Jose, let me turn it over to you just to kind of give an overview on where some of our efforts are, where there's still wood that needs to be chopped, and how we're making the plans to do so.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members, Jose Gonzalez, Transportation Director and Interim Parking Director. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to share with you all some of the initiatives and our recent efforts, at least in the past about 7 months since I've been with the Parking Department. Several initiatives that we're working on multiple fronts to try to enhance our enforcement efforts, including using technology more efficiently to help us enforce smarter and better. I'll start with our most important resource, which is our people, our personnel, our parking enforcement specialists. Back 7 months ago, we had about a dozen, if not more, vacancies. So we were down in those numbers. Since then, we've been able to hire all 50, and now we're down to 48. We just had a couple of parking enforcement specialists that resigned. They were part-timers. They were not full-timers, but they did resign. So we're now at 48 out of 50 parking enforcement specialists, but we're just aggressively recruiting. We have still, our list is active, and we're going down the list and calling folks to fill those 2 positions that were just recently vacated about a week or a couple weeks ago. Then in terms of technology, I think technology is an area that as a department, we really have not capitalized on or explored thoroughly. And there's a lot of technologies out there that help enforcement, that make enforcement just more efficient. And I want to highlight a few of those. LPRs, license plate recognition, mobile devices, for example. 7 months ago, we were at 0. We're currently at 3. We purchased 3 new mobile LPR devices. They'll go into effect January 1st.
Real quick, sorry to cut you off. That was actually going to be my next question. I think last update we received, they were going to be implemented December 1st, if I recall, or the end of November. Have those been implemented? I think you might have just answered the question that I had, but they'll be.
Yeah, they went through some testing and some integration and the actual mounting of the devices on the vehicles, but I think we're set for January 1st for deployment.
It's written in stone that they're going to be out there up and running January 1st?
That's our goal. That's
Okay.
our goal.
Good morning, Alberto Ventura, Assistant Parking Director. We are installing the computers. IT was configuring them. They're configured. On Monday, they will be installed. We'll do 1 week of training just to make sure that January 1st, we're ready to roll out with them.
And I'll ask if that does not get implemented by January 1st, if you could issue a letter to commission, because in the interim, I'm going to assume, not hearing anything other, that these are up and running by January 1st.
Sure. And it may be January 2nd if January 1st, because it is a holiday, but it may be the 2nd. Okay, thank you. Along the same vein of the LPRs, 3 is a very small number. There's no reason why we can't have 3. These devices are not cost prohibitive. So my goal is to purchase several more. We haven't quite decided on what that number should be, but we have 30 vehicles for our parking enforcement specialists. So there's no reason why we should only have 3 LPRs in our city. Clearly, the benefits are obvious. An LPR can scan a lot more vehicles in the same amount of time than a parking enforcement specialist can, having to be out of the vehicle and walking and scanning each individual vehicle. So next.
Jose, on that note, when you bring up vehicles, and I want to do my best to stay on topic here, but I've always wondered, I'm out there, I see your team, the wonderful team. Like you said, our people are the best assets, but I see them driving around these pickup trucks to do parking enforcement. And then, they have to park in the median, these very heavy-duty trucks that I don't know if are applicable to the job at hand. I promise I'm not part of a golf cart lobby of any means, but I always wonder, they're easy, they're mobile, they're small, they're compact, they're easy to drive around. Why? They're green, right? For our parking enforcement efforts, why do we have this fleet, this vehicle that is so cumbersome, both to our infrastructure, our traffic? Because when they're out, when our great agents are out trying to, manually go car by car, they need to put that vehicle somewhere. And it gets in the way. It's often parked in the median. I think something much more smaller or mobile, if we want to laugh at golf carts, similar to what the police have up in New York City, the small mobiles. Why do we not have something smaller and more nimble? I know that way, you're interim, that's not you making those decisions years ago, but would that be a good effort to essentially embark on going forward?
Sure. Short of there being a fatal flaw, which, I don't know enough about the topic, Mr. Chair, to really be able to respond to your question. I don't know if there's a fatal flaw associated with that. It may be part of a union contract. I'm not sure. But I see where you're going, and I do believe that a smaller, more nimble vehicle would be advantageous from the standpoint of being able to just more quickly enforce. And I want to turn it over to Assistant Director Alberto Ventura to expand on that.
Well, Alberto, go ahead, and then Commissioner Gonzalez.
Several reasons would be inclement weather and a golf cart. You'll have to then go to a garage and stay there until it subsides. Another thing is when we have to put up and take down gorilla poles. And a golf cart, you really can't have them because somebody might take them. So we have to make sure that they're protected from anybody stealing them. The gorilla pose that we put on when somebody reserves a space?
But you don't need a whole fleet.
No,
you know.
not a whole fleet, but we do have at least
Because
on
with
every
the,
shift.
with the inclement weather, I'm sorry, through the chair, because I wasn't recognized, but even with inclement weather, if the LPRs were on golf carts, for example, or just on the regular vehicles, on a regular vehicle, they gotta get out of the car to place the ticket on the windshield.
Correct, but if it's inclement weather, they could just park on the side and stay in the vehicle until it subsides. But if it's raining hard, then they have to find the nearest garage and go park there and then come back out.
I think that idea works for half the year, but I think that half the year is so hot outside that you get out of your car to give a citation in the sun, and you literally need to go back and sit in your car in the AC to kind of recover and drink water before you go to the next, as you're walking or driving around, that would be my only concern, simply because people are literally getting heat stroke and getting sick. This was actually a big discussion, wasn't it, for employees that had to work outside, especially in landscaping and areas. And parking lots are hot. You're on asphalt. I mean, we're trying to plant trees in one of our parking lots to see if we can make it a little bit cooler, but the majority of our parking lots have no shade whatsoever. So they're in the hot sun, it's beating down on them, and if you can find a golf cart that has like some sort of AC, I think it would work, like a bubble cart,
Where I was going with this, whether it be a golf cart or something smaller, more nimble, that doesn't take such a strain on our infrastructure and actually is more green and emission friendly, I think that's where it just seems from a common layperson would make sense. I see these pickup. Am I correct that the majority of the cars that we're using in the fleet for this are pickup trucks?
No, we have different types of vehicles. We have SUVs, we have pickup trucks.
I don't know if SUVs,
Well, there are
go
lots.
against my argument.
Yeah. They're still heavy vehicles.
Exactly.
Totally understand where you're going with this. I think we're open to exploring different
Let's
vehicle
explore.
options.
Yep.
And we can come back to you at a future meeting and report on that aspect.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. All right, so continuing on with our efforts, we procured a vendor and we executed all the agreements necessary for the purchase of electronic handheld parking enforcement solutions that are integrated with the county's parking citation issuance system. And what that does is it streamlined the number of devices that a parking enforcement specialist has to carry with them as they're enforcing. It used to be that they had to carry two different devices. One belonged to the county, the other one belonged to the cities. Because the integration has to be at both levels. The integration has to be at the county level with the clerk of the courts as the citations are issued there through the clerk of the courts. But then also the system had to be integrated with our own parking payment options, Park Mobile, Pay by Phone, the kiosk, the pay stations and whatnot. So it was two different devices. Now it's just one device. The information just needs to be entered once. So that right there was a big step in the right direction, and we launched that last month in November.
Excellent. The one thing maybe that would be so great that you could embark on before somebody permanent comes in and something that would be continued is really having data-driven decisions. I love having data in front of me. Data. Maybe if we could implement something like on a quarterly basis, the parking department does an LTC for what our parking enforcement metrics are and what that looks like on a year-over-year basis. I don't want to just have these wishy-washy feel good, hey, we're doing, okay, team, go out and get them, right? Let's have data-driven things so we can see actually what's transpiring in our city. And I think a quarterly letter to commission that you could start would be fantastic.
Absolutely, we'd be happy to do that. And Mr. Chair, with this system that I was referring to that we just launched, we can do that. We'll have a state-of-the-art dashboard will have dashboard, and all the key metrics will be part of that dashboard. So we'll be able to do that now with this new system, whereas it would have been a lot more convoluted to do that prior to November.
Except for freight loading zones?
Next,
It could be, I mean, we could request that, certainly, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, Commissioner Bott.
I'm sure this is a dumb question, but the LPRs help the PESs do their job, but also is it tied into the police database so that
It is.
if there's
Yes.
a flag?
Yes, it will flag, certain criminal activity or whatnot, and it is integrated with the police system.
So what happens?
They will see certain information that they may need for police purposes, whereas we may not see that, but they will. They have, police
So
has
it
access
gets
to that.
flagged contemporaneously, and then do the police come out immediately and do whatever they do? Does it get towed? What happens?
Good morning, ma'am. Deputy Chief Paul Acosta on behalf of the PD. So our system receives an alert to all patrol officers that are out on the street. So for example, if they come across a stolen vehicle or of something like that, or even a wanted vehicle for some other reason, then we would come out and assist and conduct enforcement if needed.
Is it at the moment?
Yes.
Okay. So, and if the person obviously doesn't have to be standing by their car, what happens to the vehicle? It
Well-
gets impounded?
Well, we can impound it or sit and wait and hope to capture and investigate further and determine whether or not the person that was occupying the car is wanted for that particular crime that generated the alert. If that never happens, if we sit on the car for, a considerable amount of time, then we'll go ahead and tow the vehicle, and then someone's gonna come looking for it, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. So, want to get through this. We're going to try and end our meeting around 1-ish today. Jose, I want to thank you for your efforts in the interim. You've done a fantastic job. You have a lot on your plate, especially with the Transportation Department. But I want to keep this open, so this is part of an ongoing discussion that we bring back every couple of months. I want to implement a quarterly LTC. I feel like I'm getting pinged on all sides here, so if anybody needs anything, speak up.
Yeah. Just before you close it out, I wanted to close the loop in the conversation we had in the neighborhoods committee meeting about, in addition to the alley zones and the freight loading zones, this issue of trucks coming and blocking rights of way on traffic, Indian Creek and Pine Tree and Lagorce, and what we're doing. I know the police get $100,000 from the parking department to help assist with that. Can you illuminate what's going on there? Because if that's something that needs to be adjusted, if we need to be holding PD accountable for a higher rate of enforcement, or if maybe it's better to spend the money hiring some, bringing our total up to 52 PESs instead of 50. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Sure,
Please?
sure, and I think I'm going to also rely on Chief Acosta to expand on some of this, at least on their portion of the operation. Commissioner, I could speak to our numbers, and in terms of freight loading zone tows for this past fiscal year, 23-24, we executed 4,576 tows. Those do not include the police tows. The police tows are above and beyond this number, and the chief will be able to speak to that, I'm sure. So we are definitely towing a lot out there. And we know, because sometimes we get the complaints that we're being too aggressive. So at any given time, there's anywhere between 3 to 5 parking specialists that are assigned to freight loading zones throughout the whole city. And that's really not a lot, 3 to 5 for the entire city. And we're bringing in 4,576 tows for the fiscal year.
Let me just ask you this, just following up on Commissioner Bott's question. Are they also doing, and I'm sorry, because I think this may have been part of the neighborhood discussion, and perhaps it didn't register right in me. Are they also doing the alley loading zones and the commercial loading zones? Or are they only doing freight loading zones? Because they all create an
They are
issue.
as well, yes, alley loading zones as well, because to park in an alley, you need a permit. So we do enforce that as well.
So what isn't if I may, through the chair, continue on this thought, what isn't really being addressed yet so much, I mean, I see that there are violations issued, but this issue of traffic jams being caused by people, by commercial vehicles parking in, on streets where there are no loading zones of any kind, not alleys, not side streets, not medians, but blocking lanes of traffic at rush hour. So that $100,000 that gets used, how does that get used? Can it be dedicated to clearing that out? I know there's outreach to the vendors, Amazon and, Instacart and whoever else is doing all this delivery, but you see it every day at rush hour, in the mornings especially, but in the evenings as well, on these narrow, Pine Tree and Lagorce, and you see it on Indian Creek, and I'm sure you see it on Alton as well to some degree, but it's a little bit of a different story. But can we do some more dedicated surveillance or operational plan to try to mitigate that? Because it just really snarls up traffic when you go down a lane, a full lane at rush hour for 10 minutes at a time.
It agreed 100%, Commissioner. So our parking enforcement officers, as they go around the city enforcing, they do look for those types of violations, in which case there is a citation that's issued to the driver, and that citation is in the amount of $124. It's really not a lot. And then in addition to that, our parking enforcement specialists issue a right-of-way violation as well. The right-of-way violation is for a higher amount, approximately $500. Just filling out that part of the citation takes a lot longer than just issuing a citation. So there's the citation plus the right-of-way violation. Right-of-way violations do take time to fill out.
So let me ask you this. So you said this year alone, you guys, parking enforcement, have done how many tows?
4,576 tows
and
from
that's
freight
tied
loading
to-
zones.
That's tied to a citation.
And that's tied to a citation.
And the citation is how much?
124.
But and then when the police does this, chief,
Sure.
do they get a parking citation on the police enforcing this, or do they get a different type of enforcement?
Sometimes they get a uniform traffic citation.
A
and
uniform
also-
traffic citation.
And also a parking.
Okay,
Am I correct, Lieutenant?
that is what will curb the behavior.
Yes.
The uniform traffic citation is what's going to curb the behavior. The $124 parking ticket from the parking department, that is the cost of doing business. But the uniform traffic citation is what's gonna curb the behavior of these individuals, because it affects their insurance, it's gonna get them points. That's really what we need. So let me ask you this. Let's talk about the data, because, so we know parking has done about 4,000 this year. How many of this type of enforcement have we had from police this year?
For the last fiscal year, beginning in October of '23, ending in October '24, we have, focusing on just FLZ, 403 tows.
403?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just trying to understand, why is the number so, and how many people do you have dedicated to FLZ, Jose?
3 to 5
3
at
to
any
5.
point in time.
And how many people do we have in police that's doing this?
Monday through Friday, Commissioner, we have 2 motor officers
Okay.
that focus on FLZs between 7 a.m. and 11 a.m.
All right, so why are the numbers so different then? Why is it that parking is doing 4,000 and police, we have 403 for the last fiscal year? And the reason why I ask this is because I think you hear from us a true desire to curb this because of the great implication it has on traffic. And I think that you guys are actually the key element. I almost wouldn't even want parking doing the enforcement of this, because I want to drop the hammer on the people who are blocking traffic and are causing the delays on our streets. And so I'm just wondering, why is there a differential on the numbers?
Well, sir, I can only account for PD in that
We do a variety of different types of enforcement, as you know. Our main focus is speed and other moving violations that occur throughout the city, and also at Commission direction, we've been focusing in on a lot of traffic enforcement. A lot of times, for example, when we look at the Monday through Friday data, sometimes the officers are doing escorts, sometimes they're doing a funeral escort. They have training, things like that, where our focus is not just on parking. We do a variety of it to include parking. So I do believe, in looking at this internally, there is an opportunity for us to partner with our parking enforcement colleagues and increase our efforts in this area.
Yeah, because I'll just say also, because of the traffic situation that we have, then
Yes,
we
sir.
end up having to come in and do other supplements.
Correct.
In the police department because of the traffic issue. And maybe, when in fact, I got some notes that show that in 2015-16 fiscal year, the FLZ tows with police were about 3,400. So it's a big drop, from fiscal year 23-24, or to fiscal year 23-24. Over a 9-year period, it went from 3,400 to 400. Right. And that's the thing. I really think if we really want to solve this problem, the uniform traffic citation is the tool that's needed here as opposed to the parking citation. And I want to defer or yield to my colleague, Commissioner Bod, as I see she's got her hand raised, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
So, I think there are a couple different things going on. They're all important, but I think the traffic problem is the one thing that isn't being directly addressed here. And so maybe we could, through the chair, ask you guys to collaborate and come back to us in a month with a plan to address what the best, do sting operation for a week at a time on Indian Creek and on Collins and wherever, because it's not the loading zones and it's not individual drivers, it's commercial drivers, whether it's people, rideshare people or Amazon deliveries or whatever. And so I'm curious, I don't know the answer, how getting a UTC affects them professionally. Like, I don't want somebody to lose their job because well, it's a bit draconian. I'm not quite there yet. Give me another year, but right now I'm not quite to that point. But
second year you will be.
I do want to send a very clear message that this way of operating is no longer tolerated. So if it means that your service gets smaller trucks so that you can pull into the buildings, and also, by the way, reach out to the buildings and say, you can't use the right-of-way for delivery purposes to your building because all the other people who don't have the benefit of living in your building are now sitting in traffic for 10 minutes extra than they would be already. So I think we need you guys to collaborate and come back to us with a plan. I don't want to take anything away from the PD, but if that $100,000 is better used by hiring 2 more full-time parking enforcement specialists, then maybe that's a conversation that needs to be had. But I will leave it up to you guys to come back to us with a concerted set of ideas to implement and see if we can't make a dent in this.
We'll definitely do that, and we'll get with our partners and we'll come up with something that I think you'll approve.
Okay. Do we need to make a motion on that, or is that just?
Chair, if I can, I think we'll show the item, because you wanted to stay here, but there was one item I think that goes up, and so I think we'll show the item heard. Staff presented an update. You had mentioned to return in a few months, which I was going to list as March.
Let's call it 2, just because
February.
I know we have a long agenda. We're not going to get to a lot of it today.
Okay.
So I don't want to just put this on and have them come back for next month when
That's fine.
we might not get there. Let's have it 2 months, and then Jose, if you could start a monthly, actually, LTC. If we need to scale that back, we can.
That was the part of the that would be the motion then, because that would have to go back to commission. So I think we'd show then as the motion then would be to return to commission with a favorable recommendation to direct administration to produce a quarterly LTC and parking enforcement effort.
Let's do monthly.
Oh, you want to do a monthly?
Yeah.
Okay. Chair, you made the motion?
Yep.
Okay. I need a second.
I'll second.
I think I heard
And
Commissioner
Mr. Chair, may I
Rosa-Gonzalez.
just make one last comment, so the committee's aware. One of the things that we are also looking at is curb management, automated curb management strategies to really better manage our curbs and monetize our curbs. There are different technologies rather new in the industry that I think we can explore and really better just more efficiently manage our curbs. There's a lot of competition for our limited curb space, including from rideshare and other purposes, other uses, and I think capitalizing on that is important for the city.
I love it. Thank you, Jose.
And just for the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Item passes. Thank you.
I don't think we've lost Commissioner Fernandez, and if we summon him, we will do, is it NB 26, is it, that is the speed detection? I know that we have people here from out of town, so I'm going to be respectful of their time.
Thank you. I'll take me a minute to read the item. Item MB 26, discuss the resolution of the mayor and city commission of the city of Miami Beach, Florida, accepting the recommendation of the city manager to authorize negotiations relating to the request for proposals number 2024-274-DF speed detection camera system for school zones, authorizing the administration to enter into negotiations with Modexo Traffic Management USA Incorporated as the top-ranked proposer. Further, if the administration is not successful in negotiating an agreement with Modexo Traffic Management USA Incorporated, authorizing the administration to enter into negotiations with Census Gatso USA Incorporated as the second-ranked proposer. Further, if the administration is not successful in negotiating with the agreement with Census Gatso USA Incorporated, authorizing the administration to enter into negotiations with Japotnik North America Incorporated as the third-ranked proposer, and further authorize the city manager and city clerk to execute agreements upon a conclusion of the successful negotiations by the administration. MB 26. And if I butchered any of those names, I apologize.
Commissioner Fernandez, do you want me to turn this to you, or should we have staff come up and give an overview?
Sure. Just generally, this item is an item that went to the city commission. I pulled it from the consent agenda. It would have authorized, it would have accepted staff's recommendation for the speed detection camera systems in the school zones. And I pulled it because while this program reflects our commitment to safety in school areas, and it's something that we've been working on for a long time, I wanted to acknowledge the two bid protests that were filed regarding the procurement and the address that the city gave in response to it. And I'd be happy to hear from our procurement director on this item and on staff's perspectives having to do with the two bid protests that the city received.
So good morning, commissioners. Good morning, committee members. We did receive two protests. They were responded to within the timeline required to do so. And at this point, the protest period has ended and the city's recommendation remained in place.
So I'll tell you what my concern is. There were two bid protests. I think one was from a company called Sensi. Is that how you pronounce it? Sensi?
Census Gatso.
Census. And Census was arguing that Modexo, which was, or is that how you pronounce it?
Modexo.
Modexo. Very unique names. Sensi. Right? I know they do sound like pharmaceutical companies. But Sensi was arguing that Modexo's proposal was non-responsive due to an incomplete cost reporting and the inclusion of conditional terms such as cost of living adjustments. Is that correct?
We did review that with legal and we did respond to the protest accordingly.
Right. And you guys responded that those issues did not render Modexo's proposal non-responsive.
Correct.
Okay. And then Red Speed also made a protest claiming that the city miscalculated the pricing, the pricing score.
Correct. And that was also reviewed with the city attorney's office and responded to accordingly.
Right. And now the thing is, from my perspective, notwithstanding the city's response to these bid protests, what I see here is that, we have 3 out of the 8 respondents involved in a bid protest. You have Sensi, you have Modexo, and you have Red Speed. And this isn't, very typical. We usually don't have this level. We usually don't have 40% of the respondents to an RFP involved in a formal protest.
Just to, Modaxo has not protested, they're the recommended.
But they're involved. They're involved
Yes.
in the protest, and it's very uncommon. This doesn't happen very frequently, and I just feel, is there an urgency to this contract right now? Like, is this a time sensitive?
This is not a replacement contract. This is a new contract for the city, and it's a revenue generating contract. So it is not, this was the will of the commission to bring this as a solicitation, so.
So it's not urgent.
Correct.
You see, I don't like when there's bid protests, even though there could always be a bid protest, but, you'll get a bid protest, but, you usually don't have 40% of the respondents involved somehow with the bid protest. And I just, given that there's not an urgency with this, I just rather us maybe consider a new solicitation and see if we avoid, the lingering issues of people protesting the bids, and then potentially, these things can ultimately end up in legal challenge if people's, remain in their standing, I believe. So that's what I feel. And it's the reason why I pulled the item from the consent agenda. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Bott.
I'd actually like to hear from our legal team, because what I'm concerned about is that this becomes the beginning of a slippery slope, and that everybody knows that if you bid on something in the city of Miami Beach and protest it, if you don't get the bid, they will, throw out the entire process and start again. And I think that is, beyond cumbersome, and I think there are bad actors. I'm not saying these individuals are, but I think there are bad actors who might try to take advantage of the situation, and things are slow enough in government. I very much appreciate the desire to have things be clean and above reproach, and make sure there are no issues. But I'd like to have the city attorney weigh in on this.
We're confident that the responses were adequate and appropriate, but this is entirely a policy call for this body to make. In terms of whether it's a slippery slope or not, that's something that you all need to agree on or not.
My preference, that's fine. I don't like bid protests. And in this case, there were multiple bid protests on something that is not urgent, on something that we're not dependent on right now, on something new that we're establishing. I'd rather this be as clean, as streamlined, for there to be as few problems as possible. And my preference would be, let's go out there, let's do a new procurement, and just make sure that there aren't any, lingering concerns that can be then used against the city on something that's supposed to be good for the city, and something that's supposed to protect the safety of students, and on something that's supposed to generate revenues to enhance our public safety goals. I don't want this to become an issue of liability for the city. And that would be my motion.
If I may, I think so the motion is to return to commission with a favorable recommendation to direct the administration to re-procure the services?
Yeah, that's what I would feel more comfortable with, but I'm happy to get feedback from my other colleagues.
We need a second. The motion would need a second.
Motion, Commissioner, but
Your mic is off.
I'll second your motion. I do think Commissioner Bott's comments made sense, not something hard, fast, one way or another, but I'll second yours to hear this at the fuller commission, but I'll keep an open mind there. But I do think it's useful to just facilitate a broader discussion.
Sure.
I don't like this item at all, but it's not about what it's for. It's about a process. I'll go along with what you guys are proposing about you know, this one bid, but I do agree, Commissioner Bott, with what you said, you know, to some extent. So make an exception, have a conversation, anything to elongate this process.
That's not the goal, but.
On the motion, all in favor?
Yeah, yeah, and I just want to put it on the record. I really think that issuing a new RFP would provide an opportunity to refine and clarify any aspects of the solicitation that led to these disputes or to these protests that were filed, and reduce the risk of, you know, any further challenges or any perception that someone feels that they were treated unfair or anything like that. I don't want that happening with a procurement item. And so I know you guys are amazing, and you've been doing such amazing work. And so I just, you know, let's clarify anything so that everyone is clear, and we can move forward with something, hopefully with no protest.
Can I clarify, Commissioner Bott, were you a yes or no?
No.
You're no. Should the item pass 3-1?
Let's hear OB1. I want to get that out of the way. Leasing incentives for vacant commercial properties. And then time pending, we're going to hear the tree items that we have kind of looped together.
OB1, thank you. OB1, discussion of potential leasing incentives for owners of vacant commercial properties, commercial vacant retail vacancy analysis update, OB1.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair and Commissioners. Raquel Williams, Assistant City Manager. At a previous FERC meeting, I believe in October, the committee asked that we come back with additional information on vacancy rates, rental rates in our commercial corridors, to take a look to see how we're doing and compare us to other areas, including Miami-Dade County, City of Miami. So we've done that. You will see in the detail memo provided that Miami Beach is high up there in our price per square foot as compared to other areas. And this is not surprising to us, because as we do outreach to the business community, that's one of the things that we hear as a concern. If you look at Miami Beach, our average asking rent is about $98. In other areas, Miami-Dade County, it's somewhere in the mid-40s, $46, $45. We're looking at Wynwood, $78, somewhere in that ballpark. So we are already about $30 per square foot more than a comparable area. So one of the things that we wanted to highlight today is our Job Creation Incentive Program, which is a program that was established a few years ago. We do have an applicant included in the memorandum, Edgelord, and I know the chair is very familiar with that company. They are transitioning from a temporary space in the design district to Lincoln Road, 230 Lincoln Road to be specific. And it is in that area of Lincoln Road that is outside of the business improvement district. They are taking up about 30,000 square feet. They're investing and have done most of the investment in capital improvements already, to the tune of about $1.2 million. They intend to bring 10 employees to the city in the first year, and then 50 employees over a 4-year period. We are recommending them for the Job Creation Incentive Program, and we would love for the Finance Committee to provide a favorable recommendation so that we can bring their incentive package to the City Commission. Another thing that I would love to highlight, as it relates to incentives and the activities of the department. In the past, the Economic Development Department has typically provided a quarterly update to the Finance Committee. That item had previously been closed out, but it does provide an opportunity for us to continue to interface with this committee, provide additional information, let you know about the activities of the department, and give a status update on various businesses and initiatives that are underway within the department. So we are respectfully asking that we have that type of quarterly report be something that we can continue to provide, and hopefully the Finance Committee is supportive.
Commissioner.
Yes. I would love for you to give this presentation to the Lincoln Road bid and Washington, because it's mostly these prices are average across Miami Beach or just in the Lincoln Road area,
All
or?
right, the memorandum provides detailed information about Lincoln Road, Washington Avenue, and 41st Street. Lincoln Road's price per square foot right now is $105.68, which is above the Miami Beach average. Washington Avenue, $90.58, below our citywide average. 41st Street, $63.52. As far as vacancy rates, across the city, we're at 5.47. Washington Avenue, 5.7, and 41st Street, 8%. Lincoln Road, and we looked at an area that's larger than the Business Improvement District, so going from 17 to Lincoln Lane South, Alton, and then all the way to Collins. The vacancy rate in that area is about 18%. And so we see that that corridor is the most impacted by our rental climate at this time.
My recommendation on this would be to make a motion to have our administration present this at the Lincoln Road bid so that the property owners can see just how expensive they are compared to other places in Miami-Dade County. You know, because if we are going to implement, you know, I've been sitting on that vacancy registration that Raquel we put a lot of time into creating, which means that if you're vacant over a certain amount of months, you need to register. And if you continue to be vacant over a certain amount of months, you actually get a registration fee. We can't penalize people, but we can charge them to be on a list and register them, which is one way of, you know, we don't want to punish business. We punish our businesses. We want to incentivize them, right? But the fact of the matter is that their prices are so high compared to every place else. So let's start to educate them and show them these comparisons, because I don't think they're looking at this. And that way we can go to them with the vacancy registration and say, okay, you know what? We have educated you, showed you that you're twice the price of other places in the county, and it's very hard for us to attract retail. One of the complaints that I get from constituents is what's happening with Lincoln Road. It's you know, and it's really depressing to have that conversation again and again. And again, although there is a lot of cool stuff happening. Yesterday I walked Collins Avenue. Vivian Westwood has purchased a building on Collins Avenue. This other wine club has purchased a building on Collins. We are about...
They've rented or they've purchased buildings?
Purchased buildings, renovating these buildings. We're getting a whole new renaissance of coolness happening along the Collins Avenue corridor, which is, you know, what we've been working toward. And two young gentlemen actually have dedicated themselves to the revitalization of Collins Avenue, and they actually drew a map of all the buildings. And so I think we're going to see change right now. It's actually an amazing deal. Collins Avenue is like $600 per square foot to purchase. Okay, and these are iconic small buildings, and investors are looking, and they're actually they're buying them up. So you know we're in this process, but Lincoln Road is still so expensive. Okay, the prices have not come down like they have on Collins Avenue. Collins Avenue got to the price where these were buildings that were selling at $2,000 or $1,500 per square foot. So now it's really a bargain.
It's a deal.
It's a deal. It's a real deal to buy, you know, a building on Collins. And we went and walked the whole area yesterday, and it's really exciting, especially when we see this Vivian Westwood space. So it's going to be cool retail happening. But I would say let's refer it to the bid as the first step in taking more action.
If I may add, I do know that representatives from the Lincoln Road bid and the Washington Avenue bid are on Zoom today, but to the credit of the Lincoln Road bid, in totality, they are self-taxing themselves at a level that is higher than other bids in South Beach and in Mid Beach. So when we look at their overall budget, it's about $1.5 million. They're currently going through the renewal process, and their annual budget is probably going to be around $2 million. When we look at the Washington Avenue bid, their budget is about $500K based on their assessments, and then 41st Street is about $200K based on their assessments. So we do know that the Lincoln Road property owners are investing in Lincoln Road, and they are trying to activate and market, and they are making considerable efforts. So I just wanted to put that out there for your consideration.
Okay, and just something added, some data that I pulled, just so that you know, based on another item. We excluded Mila from all the restaurants on Lincoln Road because it's an outlier in the research. But to give you an idea of revenue, in 2021 to 22, they did $85 million. 22 to 23, they did 74 million. 23 to 24 was up slightly, 76 million. But I mean, when you look at, it's just declining sales. And I think that those declining sales are, part of the reason why it's so stigmatized right now, because anybody could technically, pull these numbers and says, this is a great place where I should go and open up, but when we look at our restaurant revenue, and the reason I prepared this is because I wanted an abatement for some of our legacy restaurants that are like Rosanella that are saying, we're going to close our doors if you don't help us somehow. So I have a whole new spiel about trying to, if you've operated over 20 years on Lincoln Road, we are going to give you an abatement, not for the newer restaurants, for the older restaurants. But, they're suffering overall, and this kind of data doesn't really help. So I think we have to go to these property owners and say, what's going to give? You got to lease it out.
Yeah, and Commissioner Bott.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the things that I've long thought a lot of these commercial and retail corridors across the country, whether they be shopping malls or things like that, they've come to the conclusion they can't live on just retail and restaurants alone, right? They need to curate experiences, an entire kind of ecosystem that is going to draw people there, because we can have all the restaurants we want open up there, but we're still going to need clients and customers coming to that road, and that's where other commercial corridors across the country kind of reinvent themselves, is bring experiences to bring people there. Commissioner Bott.
Well, thank you. To build on that point, it's not just experiences, but it's the 15-minute city, and what gets leased and put into those vacant spaces is a big deal. So it's not just restaurants or Brazilian bikini shops or super high-end sparkly clothing for a special night out. It's got to be things that residents will use, and it's got to be ideally walkable for residents who are living there, so people don't have to get in their car to go get their stuff. I mean, I don't anticipate a Publix opening on Lincoln Road. I'm not that delusional, but I would actually suggest that this presentation get made to all the business improvement districts, to 41st, to Lincoln Road, and to Washington, and the new one on Collins, and because I think it's not just the management of the bids who need to really understand this. If you're a business owner, property owner, you're kind of myopically focused on what the best bang for your business is, for your business buck is, but it's an ecosystem, and if somebody's doing something lousy for the neighborhood, everyone's going to suffer. And the flip side of that is, I think, Kristen, I don't know if you've brought something like this, but I know Alex, Joe, and I have all brought items over the last year about how to activate vacant spaces, and you and I have talked about this at length. And so if they're not willing to lower their rent voluntarily to get businesses into those spaces, or because it's a tax write-off for them as a part of a larger portfolio of properties, whatever their rationale may be, can we put together a set of criteria where there are 6 to 12 month leases where people, artists, workshops, or dance studios, or photography, whatever, but things, or even, maker studios, or anything creative in the windows, because it's really hard to lease a space when it's covered over, even with our lovely Miami Beach wrap windows. It's much more appealing to lease a space when you can sort of project your thing in that space, and to have all the windows activated, not have things boarded up or papered over. We just did a short walk, only not even 10 blocks, in the North Beach Collins Avenue corridor, and we saw a bunch of places that have been papered over for years. I mean, your team, Raquel, is going to go back and check out what's going on. And so I'd like to shake these people loose a little bit. So if there are larger kind of REIT financial implications for why they're not leasing, that's a conversation. We can't force anybody to do anything. If it's lack of information, then we can provide them with their information. But if they're not willing to work towards the greater good, then let us put together a program where they can sign up to, we figure out the insurance situation and the bathroom requirements or whatever needs to happen, so that they can sign up for 6 to 12 month leases and get people in there who need to use their space, not for profits or after school programs or who knows what.
Yes, we can coordinate a joint meeting with all the business improvement districts and even the forthcoming South Beach bid that's in the process of being established. The item about activating vacant storefronts, I think that's coming back to committee in January as previously directed, so we can definitely have a more robust discussion about what we can do.
And again, I just want to make sure it's not just the management of the bids, but it's the business owners and the property owners who really understand that this is going to be a focus for us, because it's absurd. We're charging a super premium over everybody else in our adjacent area. You might be paying top dollar to lease your space, but the guy next to you has been closed for 7 years, and it's, you know, it's whiplash.
I just want to say, when it's not owned by some like international REIT or property owner who wants to lease it out, you will see full blocks that are completely leased. And then you see these blocks that are just totally abandoned. And yesterday, for example, I was on, I believe, 9th, maybe it was 8th Street, 8th between Collins and Ocean, and the Wynwood Wells gift shop just opened up there. This other pop-up opened up, which is called the Little Big Gallery, that has all of these photos of, you know, Miami Beach scenes. By the way, these businesses are thriving. The pop-ups are doing very, very well. So, and they were really cool experiences. Did they say that, yeah, we've been really slow right now, and they don't understand why we've been so slow post-Basel? I think that's traditionally like that this time of year. But yeah, I would like as many pop-ups as possible. And I saw that, for example, when you look at that western block where the movie theater is on Lincoln Road, the one side owned by Robert Winnett is like completely leased. And when a tenant leaves, he makes sure that somebody goes immediately right back in. But then you look at the other side and, you know, Sushi Doriku has been there. You know what they said? They said, we're not leasing it because we're waiting for zoning. And even if they get the zoning, who even knows what that means? Are they going to flip it? Are they to someone else who's going to wait for more zoning? Do you understand?
But also, and also zoning doesn't happen, you know, with the stroke of a pen. So in those intermediary 5 years, whatever the zoning might change, you could still have somebody in there and just say it's a shorter term lease.
But it's definitely a collaborative process, trying to coordinate with the property owners to ensure that Lincoln Road is active and our other commercial corridors are active. We can certainly explore, I know Commissioner Rosa Gonzalez mentioned the vacant registry program. I'm not sure that our businesses are of the mindset that they want to have such a registry, and our property owners want to have such a registry, because they may be concerned about how that impacts them long term. I know I've heard feedback about that in the past when this was initially floated, and so we can bring that up as part of that joint discussion with the property owners and the bids to see if that's something that they would want to explore with us. I think anything that we do has to be collaborative with the property owners and with the bids.
By the way, they don't want the vacancy registration because they don't want to show that their properties are vacant. At the same time, they don't want to lower what they're trying to lease out per square foot, because then the value of their property on the open market looks like it's going to be lower. But if you're on the vacancy registration and they Google your, if we do this the right way, and they are on the vacancy registration and they type in that corporation's name and that pops up, that is going to put a lot of pressure on these guys to lease out their space and reduce their rents, or at least enter into a pop-up where you can have the pop-up and still have your advertised per square footage commercial leasing price, so that their overall value is good. They have to realize, though, some of these property owners purchased, you know, at a much higher rate than they did now. It's not our fault.
Well, and maybe one of the ways to get around the registry is that you either are on the registry or you do pop-up leases.
Oh.
Well,
that's brilliant. Do you want to co-sponsor that? That is really good. You are on the list, or you're a pop-up. That's really good.
Well, I'd like to.
Some of the previous exclusions discussed about 2 years ago would be for properties that have an active lease but don't have the tenant actually in the space yet. Maybe there's a build out going on, maybe they're going through the permitting process, and so we wouldn't want to penalize them in any way because they are actively trying to bring someone into the space. And so we have certain exclusions that we had explored before, happy to bring those back as well, but I think that consideration is valid.
Chair, where are we going with this?
Yeah, I think I heard a couple of different items, and I'm I'm going to try and summarize them all, is to return to commission with a favorable recommendation to direct administration to approve the GCIP application for Edgeler LLC, for the economic development to present its report to the various bids in the city, and for the economic development department to return to FERC with a periodic update. And I think that periodic update then would allow the economic development department to have these ongoing discussions of these different programs. So I think that kind of menagerie of number of items was where you guys were going.
That was one motion. And then the next motion, which I'm seconding, which came from Commissioner Bott, is to use the current vacancy registration and offer property owners, and we'll move this forward to the full commission. You can do a pop-up lease on your vacancy if you're not in the current building process, or you can join the vacancy registration list, which will have a fee associated with it. And I think we're going to bump up the fees.
So
Raquel.
there's not
We can work on
currently-
that. Commissioner Bott, do you want to work on that before February meeting? That's really, okay.
There's not currently a vacant registry program.
But we're going to put it forward
So
with those criteria co-sponsored by the two of us.
if that is the will of the committee to bring it forward to
What
commission.
I was, on that item, I think that's where the third part of the motion I was recommending for the ED department to return to FERC with an update, is that ED could then return to FERC with
That program.
an update including
I think we
that
should
program.
just move it forward to February because it's going to take a couple of readings anyway. And, you know, I mean, by the time you get this implemented.
But we don't know what it is exactly yet.
Right.
That's true.
So
that
we
is
could
true.
return,
So
so
we
we
could-
could
we could
return
do
in
the-
January, yeah, this whole item would go back to the commission because there's a number of items to get commission to direct administration to do. And then it would come back to that next after FERC to,
I think it may be beneficial for that joint meeting of the property owners and the bids to discuss the vacant registry program that would be proposed before the committee and get their feedback so that we may incorporate anything as necessary. I think just from a scheduling standpoint, I think maybe we should consider February to come back with this so that we can schedule that meeting with all those groups, get the input, and then package something that has the input of those organizations.
Yeah, I know we want to light a fire here, but I'm a big fan of measuring twice and cutting once, and this is new, completely new to us. And so I would rather try to get some productive feedback on board, craft something that might actually get
and
things
that,
done.
and if I can, Commissioner, and that was why the recommendation for the ED to return with an update, and that would
Yeah.
include, I think the Economic Development Department has heard your ideas in that. So once this goes back to commission for the commission to endorse all of these concepts that are in here, then they would be able to come back, and that would give ED time to develop a program to present back.
And the staff is also requesting the Economic Development Quarterly Update to be something that is referred to the Finance Committee so that we can.
That was the
So
third part.
not just an update on this specific.
No, that's why I have it as a more generic one, and that could be incorporated into that periodic update.
Okay.
So if, I think that summarizes everything. I need who's making that motion?
I'll second.
I'll make the
Am I able to
motion.
make them?
So Commissioner Rosa Gonzalez and Chair Magazine. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
A lot of stuff, critical stuff we want to get to, probably not going to be able to. I know we want to get out of here by about 1. If we can hear 2 quick items, while we have quorum, they're staff-driven, discuss indexing the living wage rates for employees, number 9. And then I think number 16 will be 1 minute through the police department, discuss the purchasing handheld narcotics analyzers.
Yes, Chair, those should be rather quick. MB9 discussed regarding living wage rates beginning July 2025 in accordance with Chapter 2, Article 6, Division 6, Section 2-408 of the City Code, MB9.
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to move the item. We've historically approved these items.
I'll second. Thank you for the wonderful.
All in favor? Showing no one opposed, will show it was approved and goes to commission with a favorable recommendation. And then the final item, I think will be very quick, is MB16, discuss the police department potentially purchasing handheld narcotics analyzers to test, seize contraband, and protect Miami Beach police officers from possible exposure. MB16, and I think I can actually help speed this even more with the police. This item,
27,000.
right, actually, the police were in support. They actually applied for a grant and got most of the funds to actually do this. 27,000 is shorted on that, and they've identified funds when they're in their existing budget. So this would have to return to commission. We could actually just hear it.
I'd move it.
Item closed, we could actually just hear it.
It's a JAG grant, right? Yeah,
believe
I think
so, yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah, I'm happy to second the item. This is a no-brainer, and
Yes, sir.
thank you, Mayor Minor, for bringing this item forward.
So we'll show it item heard and closed, but we'll show that there was a favorable consideration, and the administration was going to move forward on that anyway.
Okay, is
Yep.
this for this fiscal year? Because I
Yes,
think-
the grant was already awarded, and they actually identified the additional 27,000 in savings that they have in the
No-brainer.
department. That's why we don't believe it needs to go back to the commission to endorse.
Correct. Thank you.
Good job, Chief.
Thank you.
Sorry. Just trying to help the chief out.
1 minute. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Chair, we just concluded this item.
We're good.
All right.
Closed? We'll show the item closed.
Ahead of schedule.
Releasing you 20 seconds early.
We love it. Well, Mr. Chair,
Happy holidays.
I just want to tell you, Mr. Chair, first-year commissioner, you've led this committee. Not only have you led this committee, you've guided us through a budget process, and you've done such a spectacular job. And not only that, the honor you bring to this dais.
It's
It
we,
is such
not
a
me.
privilege
thank you.
to serve as your colleague. Thank you for being such a great leader.
It's we, not me. This is a collective team. We've all done it. It's been a pleasure to do this with all of you.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Guys.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
See you next year.